Right, so we've got a Focus ST. Brother brought it as a Part X from dropping one off down in Great Yarmouth. Drove it back, driving it around for a bit, and ended up with a water pump noise. Bad water pump. I told him not to drive it. So parked up at the unit, just take you off the stand and I'll show you, because I don't think you can see just yet. So the issue was water pump noisy. We've got the timing belt kit, water pump and some fresh red antifreeze. And if you can see there, that is the timing belt, not under any tension. So I literally started it up, went to drive it in, heard some strange noises, turned it off as quickly as I could. So yeah, we're gonna see what he's up with it. Not sure if you can see that on the camera. There is some marks on the belt there, like it's been rubbing on something or something's failed. Certainly the water pump's failed. Never done one of these before. Sorry about that. Timing kit. I told my brother to get the Focus one when it was on eBay, and then they all sold out, and then the only one I could get was the Volvo one. So I'm gonna see if this Volvo one works, because I know the rocker cover has to come off. They're not a nice job as far as I'm aware. They are quite a big job, so I've got to pull rocker cover off. I think I'm gonna have to do a bit of research. I can at least pull the plugs out, well, the coil packs, pull the plugs out, so I can wind it over easier. So the way I was going to attack this was do it so that the pistons are all at the same level, so they're lower than the valves opening. Rotate the cams round to lock them in place. Rotate the crank to lock that in place. Then, as long as all my marks line up to where I am, put the belt on with the water pump, all the new pulleys and everything else, and build it up and then rotate it over by hand, just making sure that nothing's going to touch, and we'll see how we get on. So yeah. Right, so I've pulled the bonnet off, just to give me a bit more light here. Could do with another light there actually. So wheels off, and it's full of crusty stuff, so that's going to have to get cleaned before I put that back on. Probably give it an oil and a filter change while it's here, and chuck an air filter in it, change brake fluid. Yeah, so I'm still learning at this point with this one. Auxiliary belt, so it looks like there's two belts, one for the alternator and one for the AC pump. Pull that tensioner off and then take the belt off, and then undo that bolt for the tensioner to pull the tensioner off with it. Then that's out of the way. More than anything, just to get as much route as possible. It's a bit oily underneath. It's going to be one of these cars, this. It's had a new wishbone at some point. He wants bodywork doing, I think he's getting done. Probably spray it off underneath, see what's what. They are common for power steering pipes, but as far as I'm aware, the power steering pipes are possibly the same as this shape of normal Focus. So if it does go, then it's not too bad. AC pump's got a bit of misting of green, the UV dye around it, so I think they're the same as a Focus. They just bolt underneath rather than at the side. I'll have a weigh up, see what's what with it. But yeah, so I pulled the bolts out for the coil packs and other bits and pieces at the top, just left them all in. I just wanted to see, I need to look now where I lock this crank up and pull the engine mount off, I think, so I can pull all them covers off. But yeah, right, so engine mounts off. I've undone the underneath stabiliser, drain the coolant out of it so I can put the bottle over there. The bottle is just located into these tabs, that one. The cover itself is just held in with a T30 bolt and just some little plastic tabs either side of the cover that can come out. Engine mount sits like that, that cover over the top. So trolley jack underneath, block of wood or whatever takes your fancy. Just don't put the jack underneath the sump without a block of wood, or I was using the rubber blocks that the ramp comes with. Them, because now I can jack it up. I've took the alternator belt off, so that's off. I've undone the 13mm bolt in the centre, so I might pull that out, I don't know yet. But anyway, that's what's left. I'm still umming and ahhing whether to take that off. More likely have got to I don't know, finding more issues with this car. It's not a doesn't seem to be a looked after one, because usually these cars do get looked after. Usually I think we're on a manual tensioner, could be wrong. Let's see if we can look at it. Nope. Go down a bit though. Right, that is the most I can go. The water pump is seized. There you go, that's my water pump, and I can't turn that. Oh, you shouldn't be able to do that with it. Not sure if you can pick her up. I'll move it. Torch, so you get a better idea. You shouldn't be able to move it up and down, so the bearings have collapsed in that. Lucky it never went on him driving it back, because that tensioner doesn't look awfully old. I think they've done a belt but not done a water pump on it. So yeah, that's where we're currently at now. I think I'm going to take the crank pulley off. So crank pulley off, still unsure about taking the rocker cover off. I need to work out that as long as this rocker cover does not hold my cams in, I'll be okay. So I just need to work out that that rocker cover is not like a Renault design where, you know, Vauxhall, I know Vauxhall did it, and I think some of the early Megans did it where the rocker cover held the cams down. So I just hope it's not that. Or just hope it's not just a case of flicking them back covers off the cams. So Matt told me sensors up, I presume they're the VVT sensors, so I marked them up, numbered the coil packs up 1 to 5, just so everything's right going back. The only thing I'm going to have an issue with, well, shouldn't really have an issue with it, just got to take your time with it. And this is just some of the things that happen, I'm afraid. So yeah, that belt does not look awfully old, but there's quite a few interesting videos on YouTube about doing these. I think is it Jim, Olive Jim or something like that, or his videos are quite good on one of these. He just used paint marker, I think. There's another one, I think it was MJ Performance. Oh, wow, that's tight. He had another one. Before I loosen that fully, go and make sure that I can undo that. So, go and do a bit more research and see what's what. So, antifreeze drained. I'll show you the little plug underneath when I build it back up, because I'll have to screw that back in. There's a little drain plug. You get to it with a flat blader or a Phillips screwdriver, just a plug. They're not very tight, just loosely, well, not loosely, you need to nip it up and just make sure there's no water leaking coming out of it. But yeah, just undo it slow and just so the water trickles out, and then yeah, pretty much it. Right, so load it down now. So from what I can gather and other videos is that roll pin there is where it should be, and then you'll see that white bit of paint mark. You can get the torch to stick. There we go. So I've lined up paint mark there. You'll see it when you strip it down. It's a little notch there, a little leg. So that's your timing mark to that part there on the pulley. So crank is at TDC number 1. Now I'm going to lock the cam up. So it's just a bit of a learning experience this for me. I've never done one before. It's quite interesting. Right, so water pump's off. Jack the engine back up. Water pump's off. So I did this with a quarter drive set, and then if you lower it down, the last 3 bolts, so the water pump bolts look like that. Is it like that? I'm trying to remember now. Yeah. So water pump bolts look like that. That bolt, that bolt, that bolt you can get from underneath when you lower the engine down, and you also have to take the water pump out. You kind of have to hook it down to get that out because it's quite tight. So there's a bit of a puddle going on underneath. There's still water inside the engine. So water pump, as you can see, made a mark there, but I can't understand why. See, look at all that. I just look at all that. I can't understand why you would put a belt on it, because the belt looks new. I mean, it probably looks about 6 months, I'm gonna say, old, because The writing's still on the belt. It's a Gates power grip belt, but what I don't get is that tensioner is an I&A branded one, then your idler, which is this one, is a Gates power grip one. So it's kind of like they just bought a belt and an idler and a tensioner, and that was it. But this is why I tell you, whenever I do a belt, always replace the water pump, because you end up in this situation. So now, put the new water pump on is what I'm going to do. I'm going to clean it all up, new water pump on, gasket glue around it, make sure it's right. I'm going to pull the cam caps of these little circular discs that fit on the back of the rocker cover, so I don't have to take the rocker cover off, so then they can rotate round and then get timed up from the back. So then I'm lined up now with my crank. I'm at top dead centre number 1 because there is a mark on the bottom crank pulley. So may as well show you that now while we're here. Pulley off the stand. My fault. Right. So it was 30mm socket I needed for that big nut. There's 4 10mm bolts around it. So as you can see, that's what we're left with now. I did pull the bolts out of that. It won't move because you've got to take the cam sprockets off, so leave that in, don't bother taking the bolts out. I'll just put some Loctite on them 3 there on that cover and then pour them in. So if I lower